up, you guys? The Curious Owl here, and welcome to my June 2021 TBR. So June is going to be a very busy month for me. We have the next round of the Battle of the Bookish that is going on, which if you know nothing about, I will leave the Discord link for that down below in the description for you guys. But basically, Battle of the Bookish is a readathon I host with a few friends of mine. We've been doing it for a while now, and this round's theme is decades, and I am running Team 1990s, and I'm very excited because the 90s was a very interesting time period, and I was born in 1997, so I was kind of at the tail end. I learned a lot more about the 90s, more so as I was growing up in my teen years, but I have such a love for 90s culture and the things that kind of came around it that when we decided to do this theme, I jumped on doing the 1990s like that because I had to do this decade. So the way that Battle of the Bookish works is that we have set up prompts that we have for everyone to use and then also for individual teams. And so I specifically, like I said, am running Team 1990s, so I will be running the 1990s prompts. There are three teams for this readathon. We have Team 1990s, Team 2000s, and Team 2010s, and I'm so excited to do this. I am really interested to see how this goes because this is the first time that we're not having 4 teams, we have 3. So the averages in terms of how this is going to work out with people signing up for teams is going to be very interesting. But if you'd like to know more information about the readathon, like I said, the Discord will be down below for you to go check out, and you can ask us any questions you need and see all of the prompts that we have. But I will be sticking to specifically the general prompts that everyone uses and the prompts for Team 1990s as I am the team lead for that. Also this month I have a new game coming out, not really new. I privated the old videos of this TBR game that I had going on because it did not turn out the way I initially thought it would, and then I decided to revamp it and bring it out. So we'll see that in a minute how that goes, but essentially what it is I call it Wheel of D20 higher or lower. So if you saw the old videos I had done, basically I took a D20 dice and I was trying to play Dungeons and Dragons basically with my TBR, where for every roll I would do in battle, it would basically determine what book I read out of a set of prompts that I had picked out of a wheel that spun, which was bringing in the Wheel of TBR game from Cody's Book Corner. And then the D20 landing on a higher or lower number kind of was indicative of another game from How to Train Your Gavin called Play Your TBR Right, where he plays a game of higher or lower. I incorporated Dungeons and Dragons into it, but after the first round of it, I really didn't like the way that it had gone. So I decided to just completely do away with the Dungeons and Dragons and just do the D20 roll with the prompt in mind. And I just decided to call it Wheel of D20 higher or lower because that's essentially what it is. You pick a prompt that is spun off of a wheel, you pick 2 books that fit that prompt or 1 book that fits it and 1 book that doesn't necessarily fit it, and then you decide which one to go with based on what the D20 rolls, because if it lands between a 1 and a 10, you would pick the book that didn't fit the prompt or you were least excited about but fit the prompt, and then if it was an 11 to a 20, you would go with the book that did fit the prompt and or was the one you were most excited for. I hope that makes sense, but once we get into the game, it'll be really easier for you guys to see it. The other 2 things I have going on in this TBR are going to be my Stephen King reading series book for the month, which is going to be 2 books because I'm a little bit behind, but it's going to be The Dark Tower, The Wastelands, and The Dark Tower, Wizard and Glass, which are books 3 and 4 of the Dark Tower series. And then I have my reread series that I've been doing with the Kissed by an Angel series by Elizabeth Chandler, where I will be reading the book Evercrossed, which is the first book in the newer trilogy that was created after several years had passed from the end of the original trilogy that was written in the 1990s. So we are actually getting to the more modern storyline of it that was created about almost 20 years after. So I'm gonna first have us go through the Wheel of D20 higher or lower, and you guys are gonna kind of see how this whole thing works. So let's get into that. Hey guys, so we are going to be picking the wheel prompts that my D20 is going to be picking my books for, but we're going to pick 5 prompts from the wheel. I have a lot of prompts for this. A lot of these prompts were inspired by Cody's Wheel of TBR and Becca's Bookopoly. Also kind of inspired by, I think, this M&M's TBR from the booktuber, I can't remember their name. It might be Current Chapter. I'll also leave her link down in the description for you guys, but this wheel is basically an amalgamation of prompts prompts that I've grabbed from those 3 games. Okay, so I have got the wheel up, as you guys can see. It is currently to my left. To you guys, hopefully it's looking like it's to my left. Anyway, so we are going to spin the wheel for the first time and see what our first prompt is with this challenge. And we get a young adult. Okay, so that works really well. I actually can probably use this then and try to see if one of my Kissed by an Angel books will work for this. Otherwise, we're going to pick something that is, I think, another young adult, but not anything that I had already picked for either Battle of the Bookish or for my reread series. So we'll see what that is. Okay, so the second prompt we are going with is going to be a new release within the last 6 months. Ooh. I'm gonna have to do some digging because I'm fairly certain I don't have very many new releases. I can think of a couple, but I have to make sure that they were in the last 6 months, because I think the ones I'm thinking of may have been within the last year, but not the last 6 months. And I'm gonna have to either borrow those from the library or purchase them. One of the two. Okay, prompt number 3 is going to be a new author to me. So this is basically not necessarily a debut author by any means. It very well could be, but basically this is going to be any author I have never read from before. I can think of a couple again, but I'm gonna have to like do some digging because I have a lot of books here at my parents' house that are essentially like either rereads or they are continuing series that I've already started. I don't think I have any that are new to me authors, so I will probably have to go to my storage unit and grab a couple of books that I would use for this. And we are going for prompt number 4 now, which is going to be a contemporary. Okay, so for this one, I think I had an idea for a contemporary for this. Again, I don't know if I necessarily have it with me at my parents' house, so I may have to do some digging again for this, but this is exciting. I think what I might do for this one is I'll do a contemporary versus a fantasy, because I would like to try to get my Stephen King books in here somewhere. And finally, the 5th and final spin for June of 2021. A hyped release. Okay, so this would again be something that would be like a newer release, something that I was really excited about that has come out fairly recently. Again, I'm gonna have to do some digging because I gotta figure out what has been released recently that I've been really excited about and probably have to purchase it as opposed to just renting it from the library through like the audiobook or something. But if they have it in audio through my library, I think I'll use that instead because that's just going to be the easiest way for me to get to it. But who knows, maybe I have to go and find it at the bookstore instead because sometimes the library doesn't get all of the new releases like right away. Okay, so I have gone through and picked out some books that I wanted to have for each of these prompts. This is going to be really fun. So the first thing is the young adult book, which I decided to go with putting Evercrossed by Elizabeth Chandler, which is the 4th book in the Kissed by an Angel series, part of my reread series I am doing of the Kissed by an Angel series, and putting it up against Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. I actually am really excited to read this one. The thing is though, is that Evercrossed is actually completing another aspect of my TBR, and I thought it would work well. This is also part of my Battle of the Bookish TBR, so I thought if I could kill 3 birds with 1 stone, basically, that would be really cool. But if not, I'll settle for 2, and I will still love reading Clap When You Land. It's just, you know, it's another book to add as opposed to already reading something I was going to be reading this month anyways. So I apologize for the poor lighting. This is just on the bed in my bedroom. So we are pitting Evercross, though, versus Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Again, anything that is a 1 to 10 is going to be essentially anything on the left-hand side, or the book that does not necessarily meet the prompt or was my second choice for the prompt, basically. Whereas a 11 through 20 is going to be the book that mostly fits that prompt or was picked specifically to win in this prompt. So we'll just go from there. But first roll of the higher and lower game. And what do we have? An 8. So that means I will have to read Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo, as well as Evercross, because it's going to be read anyway for Battle of the Bookish and for my reread series, but now I just have to add a whole other book to this TBR. Next is a new release that was released within the last 6 months. Now for this, I have to basically pit 2 books against each other I've been really excited for to read, and that is Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard versus Firekeeper's Daughter, and I cannot remember the author's name for the life of me. But both of these I've been wanting to read for so long. Honestly, the weirdest thing too is that I've never read anything by either of these authors before. I think Firekeeper's Daughter may be a debut, and I never read the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard, but I've heard some really good things about what Realmbreaker is doing in terms of its story, and the synopsis just sounded really, really good, and so it made me really excited for it. And I almost decided that if I was gonna read Realmbreaker, I would then bump up the Red Queen series a little bit higher on my TBR, so I'm excited to see how this one goes. Okay, next we have Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard versus Firekeeper's Daughter for the book released in the last 6 months. And we have a 12, so I get to buy Realmbreaker for this prompt, and I am so excited. I hopefully will like this enough to read the Red Queen series. Next is a book that is from a new author to me. So this is anything that I have not read already by this author. So I pitted this time the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams versus The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. Now I have both of these, but they're at the storage unit, so I will have to go and grab them eventually. But both of these just sounded really interesting, and I think that they're kind of polar opposites because you've got a more urban fantasy versus a romance, and I think both are really up my alley, and I'm kind of excited to see which one of these wins. Next we have the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams versus The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, and I honestly don't know which one I would rather win, but here we go. And we have an 18, so I have to make sure I pick up the Bromance Book Club by Lyssa Kay Adams from the storage unit so that I can read this for the new to me author to me prompt. Next is a contemporary book. So for this one, I picked Breaking Bailey by Anonymous versus the One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr, I think. Now, both of these are of a similar idea. They're kind of, I think, supposed to be mysteries of some kind. The One Memory of Flora Banks, though, is a little bit more of a contemporary. It's less of the mystery, but you're still trying to, like, piece things together through the story, because I think the main character has some kind of, like, memory problem. And then Breaking Bailey, I know nothing about. I just know that it looks really kind of mysterious and dark. So I thought maybe a not super fluffy contemporary was going to be the way to go, because I've got a lot of really interesting things on this TBR for the entirety of June, so I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to, you know, spice it up a little bit and bring in like a mystery somewhere in there. Next we have Breaking Bailey versus That One Memory of Flora Banks, and again, I don't know which one I would rather read. Either way, I have to pick one of them up at the storage unit along with now the Bromance Book Club, so let's see which one it ends up being. And we have a Nat 1. Look at that! A Nat 1. So for this, I am going to have to go with The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. And then finally, I have Hyped Release, which I actually pick two books again that I was going to have to buy, which for this I picked House of Hollow against The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hay. Now, specifically, I am actually really kind of rooting for The Ones We're Meant to Find because I loved Descendant of the Crane by Joan Hay, and especially with everything this poor author has gone through in the last couple of years to even get this book out, I am just hoping and praying that it is going to live up to all of my expectations. And I think this also may have sapphic romance involved in it. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it may be sapphic. But then with House of Hollow, I have literally heard every single person talk about this book and they have loved it. So I'm really excited for it because it seems dark and twisted and weird, and everybody I know has been talking about it and has loved it. So I would like to be able to read it myself. And finally, the hyped release, which is going to be, oh gosh, this one's the most intense one. We are doing House of Hollow versus The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hay. I'm kind of nervous. And we have a 10! Oh my gosh, that means I get to read The Ones We're Meant to Find. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So yeah, those are the books I ended up picking for the wheel. So again, for a young adult prompt, Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. A new release in the last 6 months, Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard. New author to me, Bromance Book Club by Alyssa K. Adams. A contemporary, The One Memory of Flora Banks by Emily Barr. And a hyped release, The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hay. And then I still have my Battle of the Bookish TBR to go through. So let's get into Battle of the Bookish now. So some quick rules about Battle of the Bookish is that you do have to pick a team, and you don't necessarily have to complete the prompts for any reason. You really do not have to. As long as you're reading and completing books in the month, you get points for that, which is really, really awesome. And so the prompts, though, do give a bit of a boost. So for instance, if you read one of the general prompts, you'll get an additional 50 points after your page points, which depending on how big your book is, it will count for so many points. And then if you read one of the general prompts and complete one of them, you get to add another 50 points onto that. So say you read a book that was 300 pages. A 300-page book for us is worth 50 points. So you would get 50 points for reading the book itself, and then if it fits one of the general prompts, you would get another 50 points, which would make that book worth 100 points for your team. Now, if you, say, wanted to complete a prompt for your team, the team books are going to be worth 100 points. So again, if you read a 300-page book, which would be worth 50 points by itself, and you also use that to complete one of your team prompts, you would then have 150 points for that book because you would have completed a team prompt. You can only use all of the prompts once, and you cannot double or triple up because we had so very few prompts between the general ones and the team ones that we really wanted to, push you guys to really pick things that were going to fit for each one if you could. But again, if you don't complete all of them or you don't complete any of them, that's perfectly fine as well, because honestly, any little bit is literally going to help. So there are 3 prompts that we have that are general, where everybody gets to use them. You can only use them once though, and you cannot double or triple up on them. And those are to read a book that has LGBTQ characters or is written by an LGBTQ author, to read a book in general, so it's basically like a freebie, and a reread. So reading something that is a comfort read for you, or you want to reread it to maybe continue a series, you also have that. So for an LGBTQ book, I have decided to pick up I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. This is a non-binary book written by a non-binary author, and I don't know specifically if the love interest involved in this is also non-binary or if they are cisgender. This is one I've been meaning to read for quite some time and have never gotten around to, but I thought was really nice, especially because Pride Month is June, for me to be able to read this one. Then to read just a book in general, I just decided to pick one of my Stephen King books that I have to read this month, which is going to be The Dark Tower of the Wastelands. I mean, it completes a prompt. And this one was more of a priority for me anyway, so if I can get this one done and have at least one prompt done for the month, that would be great just based on this one alone, because I am doing a dedicated reading series of Stephen King. So this one will probably be one of the first ones I read anyway, so it's good just to get this one out of the way. Then for a book that is going to be a reread, again, picking something that I had on a higher priority, I picked Kissed by an Angel Ever Across. And also because, as you saw, this one lost to the young adult round for the Wheel of D20 higher or lower, which I need to pick a different name for that game. If anybody has ideas for that, please give it in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. Because this one lost to Clap When You Land, I figured that I could still squeeze it in here somehow, and because it's a reread anyway, it fits that prompt very well. Now, in terms of the team prompts, like I said, am running Team 1990s, so I have 5 prompts for my team. The first one is Buffy from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was a huge TV show when I was a baby. Like, people loved it. It was out before I was born, but people still talk about it. People still love it. And it is one of the biggest things I have ever heard about when it comes to 90s culture. So for this prompt, we are going with a book that has a badass heroine. And for this, I am picking Realmbreaker by Victoria Aveyard, which is going to be one of the books I read for Wheel of D20 higher or lower. Now, I don't know for certain if this has a badass heroine, but by the way that the synopsis was perceived by me, it seemed like this main character in Realmbreaker would be somebody I would really like, and I would see as kind of badass at times, because she's basically having to save the world. Next, we have Xena Warrior Princess. Now, this was a show, again, like Buffy, that was really big in the 90s, and honestly is one of my most treasured memories of growing up, because my grandfather, who is still alive, he loved this TV show. He loved it when it came out. He has the entire DVD collection of this series, and I just remember growing up watching this and being enamored with the Xena. And there also was the sidekick who was named Gabrielle, which is my name, so I was also enamored with it because of that. And it was just so nice to watch it with my grandpa. It was a very good bonding experience with him, and I just have so many great memories with it. For this, we're picking a story that is based in myth, because there's a lot of stuff about Xena that's kind of based in myth, like creatures and demons and things of that nature. So I thought that that was the best way to represent this series. The next book is Grunge, because in the 90s, grunge was the music of the decade. It was everything, and honestly is one of my most favorite things when thinking about the 90s. It was just the thing that I wish I would have gotten to experience as a teenager, but I was born way too late to experience it. So for this, we're picking a dark cover to match the dark soul that is within all of us. And for that, I am picking The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I'm a little nervous about this one because I did not like her duology. That was the kind of Mulan retelling. What was it called? The Smoke in the Sun? I think that's the second book. But that duology, I was not a big fan of it. Especially the second book. I thought it was kind of really not good. I just thought that the whole story of it was kind of bizarre, and it didn't really make a lot of sense. But I did really like The Wrath in the Dawn, which is her other duology. I haven't read the second one, but I really liked the first book, and so I'm a little nervous about this one, but this is her newest series, and the third book is coming out at some point this year, so I would like to read this one and The Damned, and it's also about vampires, and I love vampires, so and I think there's werewolves involved in it too. So I'm kind of excited, but I'm a little nervous at the same time. And the next prompt is Spice Girls, which is one of the biggest names you will hear about when it comes to the 90s, because not only was the 90s a really big thing with grunge, but you had groups galore. You had Spice Girls, Backstreet Boys, NSYNC. You had all of these groups of singers, and Spice Girls was personally one of my favorites. But for this, we're going with a book that has a large cast of characters to match the fact that most of these groups had at least 4 people in each group. So for this, I'm going to pick Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a classic, and I've never read it. I've never watched the movie, but it is one that I think I'm going to really like, because I've heard a lot of people say how wholesome it is in a lot of ways, and how heartbreaking it also is in a lot of ways. And then the last prompt for Battle of the Bookish is Nickelodeon, because Nickelodeon was a really big TV network that was coming around in the 90s. I mean, you had so many TV shows that were out that people still find nostalgic. Some are actually kind of very inappropriate, like looking back on some of them. And then there are others that are just kind of so zany and weird that you look back on them and you're like, this is what the generation growing up was watching as children? What the hell kind of drugs were they on? Like Courage the Cowardly Dog, for instance. That was a TV show that I think somebody must have been really, really high when they wrote, because it was all kinds of messed up. But anyway, the prompt for this is to read a middle grade, which for this I am picking Arusha and the Tree of Wishes by Roshani Chokshi, because I love this series so much. This is the third book in the Pandava Quartet, which is all based in Hindu mythology. I love Aru. I loved the first book, I love this, which was Arusha and the End of Time, and then I loved even more Arusha and the Song of Death when I got to read that as an arc a couple of years ago, and I still haven't got around to reading the Tree of Wishes. But the fourth book I think is coming out sometime next year. I could be wrong, but I need to get back to reading Aru, because Aru is such a sweetheart. She has a very special place in my heart, and I love Roshani Chokshi's writing and the humor she puts into this series, so I'm very excited to get back to this one in June. So yeah, those are all the books I plan on reading in June, which comes to a grand total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 books. Along with any other audiobooks I can manage to fit in the month. The thing is, though, is with the Battle of the Bookish ones, those aren't necessarily as big of a priority, except for the ones that are basically ones that are for Wheel of D20 higher or lower, or my Stephen King reading series, or my Kiss by an Angel reread series. I think I'm still going to go with the fact that if I complete all of those, I get to remove a prompt next month. Then if I don't complete all of them, I have to add on a prompt next month. So I think I'm going to still do that. But I'm also getting the distinct feeling that is entirely possible I will not finish everything, and that may be how it is. So those are all the books I'm planning on reading for in June. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys are planning on reading, if you are partaking in any readathons. If you're going to partake in Battle of the Bookish, like I said, the link for the Discord is going to be in the description, so you can go check it out and come join us. It is going to be over the entirety of June, so you have plenty of time to read as many books as you possibly can. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more videos like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!